Welcome back, everyone. So I'm going to show you guys how to install our ceiling paneling and everything you need for that. And in the next video, we're going to cover our wall paneling. So as you can see behind us, we have the ceiling and wall paneling here. This is our unfinished wood. It's a little bit cheaper, or you can take it home and upholster it yourself, or you can paint it. Lots of things you can do with the unfinished paneling. And the back side of it is always going to be pre-finished on one side. This is to prevent any kind of rotting or molding from moisture buildup in your van. So with that, I'm going to show you guys a couple of things you'll need first. So you're going to get this kit. You're going to install it like Riley showed you guys in the last video. And then this here is a ceiling rail. So the front of the transit vans, there's a pretty long distance between the very front of the panel and the first ceiling rib. So we have this additional ceiling rib that goes into the van, and let's go ahead and go over how we install that real quick. So we already have one installed in the van here. It is easier to install the rail first and then tuck your insulation up behind it. If you already have insulation in it, that's okay. You might just have to fight it with a hammer a little bit. What we actually did was we went ahead and pulled the insulation back, installed it, and then tucked the insulation back through. So the best way to do it is to have it at an angle and get the front side in first, and then the back side, and slide it forward all the way up to where it just nudges these foam blobs. So you can see this has this little cutout on it, and that's going to go right over the edge of the pinch weld on either side and slide it up there. Once you have it against your foam blobs, there's a hole in either end that is threaded, and you're going to go ahead and use a couple of bolts to thread it into place and get it to stay right where it's at. Make sure it's not going to rattle in your roof or anything like that. And then these three holes, we'll go ahead and put riv nuts in it like we have here, and then that's going to be able to help you bolt your panel up into it and help follow this curvature along the ceiling without having any extra movement in your ceiling paneling. All right, as you can see, we have this awesome ceiling map for you that tells you right where you're going to put all the plus nuts or riv nuts into your ceiling in the pre-existing holes. The how-to is already covered in Riley's previous video on our YouTube channel on how to install them in the walls, and in the ceiling, the install is going to be almost exactly the same. The only thing different in the ceiling is that there are a number of holes that you have to remount to work. They're just a little bit too small from forward. So that's where you're going to use the step bit that will send you and just ream them out one step. So you're going to do that first, and then you're going to go ahead and test fit your paneling. Test fitting your paneling is one of the most important steps, because if you're painting it or upholstering it or doing anything like that and it hasn't been test fit, there's some little things. Maybe you ran your wiring somewhere else that needs to be changed, or you need to cut your paneling around a different air conditioner or a fan that you have in your van. So test fitting it before you really do a lot to the panels is going to save you a lot of time down the road. So let's go ahead and get that done. So the first thing you're going to want to do before installing your ceiling paneling is go ahead and get any lights or cutouts for your fan, your pass-throughs for solar, and your ceiling wiring up for your lights. Something that's helpful for that is to map out where you're going to put it all and then put it in place. That way you don't have to be pulling your ceiling paneling up and down a bunch of times trying to get your wiring in and realizing that you forgot things, and it'll just save you a lot of time down the road. So as you can see, we've got that. We also have put some gaffer's tape in between the seams of where the panels are going to be. This helps especially if you have a lighter colored van, a white van or light gray van, and you're doing a darker upholstery color, to hide those seams between the panels. Those seams are pretty much going to be covered pretty awesomely, especially if you're going with an upholstered panel. But they'll show up a little bit without the gaffer's tape if you're not doing that. So we also have our aluminum ceiling trim pieces in here and the front aluminum cross beam installed. So the first thing we're going to do is put in the front upper panel. As you can see, it's got a funny shape on it that's going to go towards the front, and it perfectly curves around all of the bump outs in the forward front ceiling rib here. So it is helpful to have a second pair of hands sometimes, but as you can see, it's definitely doable on your own. So you're going to get it lined up, and then you're going to just kind of pull down on the edge, get one side started, come over here, pull down on the edge, and get that side in. And then you're going to push it forward about as far as it goes, and you'll see that it's going to line up right with the first plus nut there. The other thing you want to do before you start putting bolts in is make sure you get, if you're doing puck lights, get your light wiring through there before you start bolting it into place. One thing that's helpful, especially if you're on your own putting the ceiling paneling in, is one of these helping hands bars. You can get these on Amazon pretty cheap, or Home Depot, anywhere like that. As you can see, it just holds the panel in perfectly. You can go ahead and get your hardware. And we like to just put one bolt in the middle as we're getting them all lined up and in place, and then come back and tighten them in. It's always a good idea to start your bolts with the T-handle before coming in with the drill. That way you make sure that your threads aren't gonna strip out into anything else. So we like to use these, they're like 1.5 inch long bolts, and you're gonna put those in loosely so that when you come down with this, it's just gonna sit on there, but it's not quite all the way in yet. So the reason for that is so that you can go ahead and get the next panel in behind that bolt head without it, you know, fighting it or chipping out the edge of your wood or anything like that. So next panel, as you can see, the puck lights in these specific panels are offset. They're all about 26 inches in between. So you can tell that if you were to put this in this way, the lights are too close to each other. So that's how we know it needs to go towards the back, and the lights are further apart from each other. So I'm gonna line up one side first, make sure my lights wirings are going through the right area. Get these guys out of the way. There we go, we got 2 light wires poking through those holes. I'm gonna line it up. And then as you can see, a little bit of a struggle to get it lined up, but now it's perfectly centered, lined up, and that singular bolt head up there is holding it in place. And I can hold this backside in and get my next bolt started, or you can set up the helping hands while you get your bolt started. There we go. And now that panel is in place. So this is going to be the exact same process for installing your paneling once they're upholstered, painted, whatever you're doing, as well as the dry fit process. So as you can see right now, they're going in well, they're lining up with each other, they're not interfering with anything in the van, and everything is looking good. So we're going to go ahead and just throw the last 2 panels in and then come back and look at them. All right, so for your last panel, not as important when you're dry fitting it, but when you're going for your final install, you're going to want to make sure that this wire harness is tucked up behind the panel. As you can see on these rear panels, the corners have little notches in them for that wire to pass through behind it. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. We're going to go ahead and push this up and push the wiring up on top of the panel here. And then you want to just kind of make sure that it's going into the corner right there. Sometimes, for whatever reason, when Ford gives you these wiring harnesses in the vans, some of them are tighter and some of them are looser. So hopefully you have a looser one and you have a little bit more play in it. But same thing, we're going to go ahead and get that front side hooked on that bolt and then get a bolt into the rear hole here. Just like that. Perfect. And now you can see we've got the wire. It's totally going to be hidden up behind here. It goes up into these little wire passes in the corners. Everything lines up. You want to make sure that you have all of your ceiling puck light wires pulled through your pucks, or if you're doing some other kind of lighting, you know, you got your wires where they need to be. So your dry fit now, it looks good. Go ahead and take it down, do whatever you're going to do to your panels, or you just installed your ceiling paneling and you're done and good to go. In that case, we're going to go ahead and put the rest of the bolts in place as if you were, or if you are completely done with your panels and ready to install them. The next step that is kind of nice before you throw your paneling in or your bolts in is maybe get your puck lights actually installed so that you can have some light in the van while you're working. So let's go ahead and jump to that. All right, so with our pre-cut puck light panels, you're gonna get these puck lights off Amazon, and they're gonna clip right into place super easy. We like to use Wagos. They're these little wire connectors here that are super simple, super safe, and you're not gonna, they're not gonna pop out like they might with butt connectors or something like that. You don't have to have any tools to operate them. So we highly recommend these Wago connectors. You can also find those online. So make sure you go negative to negative, positive to positive. You just, stick your lights in there. And then if this is a final install, we like to wrap a little bit of electrical tape and the zip tie around your wires here to make sure that with thermal expansion or anything like that, your wires aren't going to be pulled out of place. But in this van right now, we're just test fitting these, and then we're going to move forward to our wall panel test fit in the next video. So we're just going to throw these up here for now like this because they're coming back out soon. So these have these little tabs here. I like to clip one tab under the panel and then push the other tab up and into place. And boom, you got one in. So a couple more to go. All right, so now we have all of our puck lights in the ceiling. When you don't have electrical system cabinets built into your van yet, the best thing to do to power your lights is to use a 12-volt power supply or just one of your batteries of some sort with a little fuse box. You want to make sure that you're not putting too many volts through your lights. You don't want to blow anything up. So make sure that you're doing your math on your wiring and make sure that everything's good there. But we like to use a little 12-volt power supply that we can control the exact amperage that we have going through our lights. And then, ta-da, we have some ceiling lights that will help us see what we're doing as we're installing our wall paneling in the next video. Go check it out.